Are you tired of feeling like a crash test dummy? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you why crumpled zones are for cars and not humans. Hey, this is Grown and Healthy, the channel where we explore self-improvement through movement, through our modern behavior of prolonged sitting. We sit for everything. We as humans have inadvertently developed our own crumple zone. While the automotive crumple zones are typically in the front and the rear of the vehicle, in order to spare the safety of the occupants in the cabin, humans have developed their own opposite strategy, actually working on strengthening the extremities, such as the legs and the arms, at the sacrifice of our core stability. We can observe this crumple zone in the common sitting posture of the slumped low back and the crumpling of the midsection and rounding of the low back to reach and retrieve something off of the ground, right? We like to reach down like this instead of actually hinging. And this is when you throw out your back or herniate a disc. I like to call this the false hip, where we crumple the lower torso in flexion. And this is pretty risky because the smallest error in focus or movement can cause a lightning bolt of pain and a long time of rehab. The often mentioned tweak that we always hear of. This is because you're using the false hip. And this is also why back pain is so prevalent and increasing. Even powerlifters and bodybuilders who have 100-pound plus lift totals display the same movement patterns. They get injured just like people who have never lifted any heavy weights. And this is a mobility issue because the hip flexors and the glutes are not working, they're not reciprocating, they're not being used in their full range of motion. So this is causing a bit of a problem and a disconnect from the real hip hinge, which includes the glutes and the hip flexors primarily. This is also why deadlift injuries are so prevalent. You see, when you hinge, your pubic bone should follow the alignment of your torso. You see, the pubic bone is, for a lot of us, very static, and it crumples as you lower the abdomen. This isn't just tightness, it's also poor motor mechanics. Traditional exercises make it even worse. Dead bugs, hollow holds, and planks are always cued with flatten your back. This is only going to make it worse in the long run, ingraining the rounding of the back under resistance. See, these exercises can be helpful when performed correctly, but that's by maintaining the integrity of your spine. Your pelvis is the crossroads of your abdominals, hip flexors, adductors, and glutes. Dysfunction in any of these components will lead to compensations, and those compensations will lead to injury inevitably. A curve in the low back and the upper back is perfectly normal. And while I practice movements that also segment the spine, when it comes to a heavy load or dynamic movement, a stable spine is key. In fact, the better you are at hinging and not crumpling, the better you will perform, allowing you to take the emergency brakes from around your hip flexors and glutes and reach your highest level. If you fold forward and your core is unstable, you will try to stabilize it, sometimes by slackening and protruding the gut, while the pelvis is still posteriorly tilted. This is how anterior pelvic tilt develops, or sometimes hollowing your lower back, slumping back into the chair, and this is how posterior pelvic tilt develops. And if you're familiar with the problems caused by arch support in shoes, weakening and flattening the feet of those who wear them, you can also see the same similar response. The problem of the lumbar arch support, weakening the arch support of the lower back. This is not only problematic while sitting, but this compensation is so ingrained in us that we carry it into the weight room, where we add load and danger, cementing the pattern in an attempt to avoid the inevitable injury. So how can you tell if you have a crumple zone? If you have a pooch belly, that may be a clue, but that's not everything. Do you know where your sit bones are? Are you sitting on them? Not if you flatten your lower back, but if you maintain the spine's natural curvature while sitting down, you'll feel the difference, that contact of the sitting bones on the seat. Even the way you walk will be compromised by improper hinging. While there is no correct posture, there is ideal movement. And your movement capabilities will affect your standing posture. You see, the kick forward of the heel strike, walk, will also diminish your capabilities over time. You see the excessive rounding of the low back. You see the repeated kick sweep kind of ingrains this crumple zone, losing hip flexion. And as you can see, is the excessive kicking of the pelvic region. You can see how it tucks under as I move that foot forward. And this is what most of us are doing. We are keeping that pelvis locked in that position instead of allowing it to express itself independently and allowing the glutes to help push down as we step forward. This is the reason why so many adults lose their ability to sprint, which is hip flexor and glute driven and demands that your pelvis stays in line with your torso. Now, walking forefoot allows you to grease the groove of this proper pelvic alignment. This is why I promote forefoot walking. It allows you to grease the groove of proper pelvic movement, keeping the pelvis aligned as you step forward and leaning with the torso instead of separating it. We keep it together. Now, what can we do about this? First, you can like and subscribe, and hopefully the algorithm will share this to other people who need it. Okay, so first we're gonna establish a connection with our abdominals. And I like to use vacuum holds for this. I have another video on that. I think the vacuum hold is very effective in dealing with this crumple zone by synchronizing the abs and the low back through the engagement of the transverse abdominis, the TVA, which is our natural weight belt. Once this connection is sound, then you can focus on Valsalva bracing for extreme loads. If you are crumpling, load should be avoided at all costs until this is fixed. Often the vacuum is demonstrated in a standing position, but I would also want you to practice the vacuum holds while sitting down. You can see the demonstration on this video right here. Next, we're going to use the TVA activation in motion. This will aid us in all the movements we plan on performing by locking in spine integrity, learning to release and hinge from the hips only. I want you to find a wall or a post because this is a great tool for this. Standing about a foot length away from the wall, place your butt firmly against the wall or post and squeeze your pelvic floor. I find this helps me create a mental ground for the hinge. Hinge from the hips, pressing the butt into the wall while putting the knees away from the wall simultaneously. So you want to imagine your butt and knees reaching in opposite directions. So the knees going that way and the butt going that way. You're going to feel an immediate strain in the upper hamstrings because they've been held hostage by your sitting posture. And now your goal is to incorporate them into your hinge by slowly letting go, allowing them to lengthen and your pelvis to rotate in line with your torso. Hinge the torso as forward as possible while maintaining the low back curvature. Hold for about 30 seconds, maybe even longer. Use only the glutes to raise the torso from the hinge position. You can also do this for reps, but your range should be limited by your ability to move your torso forward without rounding. Next, we're going to focus on the hip flexors. Let's get on the ground in a dead bug position. We're going to place a ball or yoga block between your knees. We're going to then engage your TVA, slightly lower your feet to the ground, utilizing only the hips. Stop as soon as you feel a break in the form, and you want to just hover over the ground and hold that for 30 seconds until you then bring it back to the return of the position. You can also do this 4 reps, but remember, stay in proper form alignment. You should feel only the glutes contacting the floor. And what you want to do as a gauge is start with your feet on the floor first, and then angle your butt to be the contact and not the low back, and then You want to hold your TVA, engage it tightly, and then lift your legs. You can keep the arc of the knee, do not pull in the heel. Keep the heel at the same angle to the hips throughout the exercise. For a real challenge and a great pelvic reset, I like to swivel my knees as I lower, and this provides an immediate change in the alignment of my pelvis. If you'd like to practice the stomach vacuum, I suggest you take a look at this demonstration. Please like and subscribe. It helps a great deal with the algorithm and the growth of this channel. This has been Grown and Healthy, the channel where we explore self-improvement through movement.